Number 12. The Berezka mammoth. If you put a steak in your freezer, it takes hours to freeze solid. If you put a 6-ton mammoth in a blizzard, it takes days. So why did we find a mammoth in Siberia with unchewed, fresh summer flowers still in its mouth? The temperature had to drop to minus 150 degrees in seconds. In 1901, an expedition from St. Petersburg trekked into the desolate Siberian tundra. They were following rumors of a fleshy mountain protruding from the frozen earth. What they found wasn't just a skeleton, it was a perfectly preserved mammoth, locked in a crouched position as if taking its final desperate breath. But the chilling part wasn't the preserved flesh or the overwhelming stench of ancient meat. It was what they found resting gently on the creature's tongue. Inside the Berezka mammoth's mouth and stomach were unchewed, fresh summer buttercups and delicate grasses. Let's talk about the unforgiving laws of thermodynamics. If a multi-ton mammal dies in a standard winter blizzard, its internal body heat keeps the core warm for days. The internal stomach acids continue to function, digesting any recent meals long before the cold can penetrate the thick hide and blubber. To freeze a colossal warm-blooded animal so rapidly that its digestive process halts mid-bite, you don't need a cold front, you need a cataclysm. The ambient temperature would have to plunge to an unfathomable minus 150 degrees Fahrenheit almost instantly. A slow onset of an ice age cannot do this. It defies the fundamental physics of cellular preservation. Traditional geology argues that sudden drops in temperature are just localized weather anomalies. But a weather anomaly doesn't snap freeze a 6-ton beast to the core before it can swallow its food. We are left looking at a snapshot of a vibrant summer day erased by a sudden wall of absolute cold, a terrifying phenomenon that wasn't just restricted to single isolated mammoths, but entire landscapes of death. Number 11. The muck of Alaska. Decades later, gold miners in the Yukon and Alaska began using high-pressure steam hoses to blast away the frozen topsoil. They were looking for precious metals hidden deep in the earth. Instead, as the permafrost melted, a putrid, suffocating smell of rotting flesh filled the air. They hadn't struck gold. They had blasted into a mass grave of incomprehensible scale. Deep beneath the Alaskan tundra lies a thick layer of what paleontologists call muck. It is a frozen, chaotic slurry containing the shattered bones of millions of animals, mammoths, mastodons, lions, and ancient horses. But they aren't just buried, they are torn apart. Limbs are twisted, spines are shredded, and the remains are violently mixed with uprooted, splintered trees and volcanic ash. Normal fossilization requires a slow, peaceful covering of sediment. This muck is the exact opposite. It looks entirely as if a massive continent-spanning tsunami of mud, water, and terror swept up millions of animals, blended them in a geologic blender, and then was flash-frozen solid in mid-air before gravity could even pull the debris back to the ground. The accepted explanation is that slow-moving glaciers pushed these remains together over millennia. Yet glacial pushing grinds bones to dust. It doesn't leave them suspended in a flash-frozen slurry of perfect preservation. The muck suggests a watery cataclysm that solidified instantaneously, leaving us to wonder what kind of environment could hide beneath miles of ice once that freezing water settled. Stick around for number 1 because it completely changes everything we know about human survival and the reset button of our planet. Number 10. The subglacial lakes of Antarctica. Imagine standing in the most hostile, barren wasteland on Earth, the deep interior of Antarctica, where temperatures regularly hover around minus 120 degrees. Russian scientists set up a drilling station here, boring down through 2 solid miles of ancient ice. They were expecting to hit solid bedrock. Instead, their drill broke through into a dark, liquid void that hadn't seen the sun in millions of years. They had discovered Lake Vostok, a massive body of liquid water trapped beneath the Antarctic ice sheet. The physics of this are staggering. While immense pressure and geothermal heat keep the water liquid, the true mystery is the pristine ecosystem locked inside. scientists pulled up perfectly preserved frozen extremophile bacteria from the boundary layers. For this biosphere to be trapped without being eradicated, the massive ice cap above it had to form with alarming speed. If Antarctica slowly drifted to the South Pole, the gradual cooling would have sterilized the environment through thousands of years of shifting climates. Instead, the rapid formation of the ice sheet acted like a colossal lid, snap-sealing an entire ecosystem perfectly intact while the surface froze over in a geological heartbeat. Experts insist the ice sheet built up inch by inch over millions of years, but the flawless preservation of this subglacial biology hints at an ice age that didn't creep in, but rather slammed shut like a bank vault. And if ice can preserve microscopic extremophiles so perfectly, imagine what it can do when it suddenly entombs much larger prey. Number 9. The blue babe steppe bison. In 1984, paleontologist Dale Guthrie made a discovery in an Alaskan gold mine. He found the mummified remains of the Pleistocene steppe bison, its skin tinted blue by a coating of vivianite. It was a spectacular find. But to celebrate their discovery, Guthrie and his team did something absolutely unthinkable. They carved off a piece of the beast's neck muscle, threw it into a pot of boiling water, and ate a 36,000-year-old bison stew. The fact that paleontologists could eat the meat of blue babe without dying of severe bacterial infection defies the standard model of decay. When an animal dies, the enzymes in its own gut immediately begin to break down the tissue. To bypass normal decomposition completely, the freezing process must outpace the speed of bacterial multiplication. For a thick-hided, heavily insulated bison, this requires a thermodynamic shock of epic proportions. The temperature plummet must have been so aggressive that it caused an instant cessation of biological decay, flash freezing the muscle fibers without allowing enough time for massive ice crystals to form, which would have ruptured the cellular structure and turned the meat into toxic mush. The meat wasn't just frozen, it was cryogenically paused. It's easy to write this off as a bison just falling into an icy crevasse, yet a crevasse doesn't instantly strip the heat from hundreds of pounds of dense muscle before rot sets in. We are witnessing the terrifying aftermath of an atmosphere turning instantly lethal, a freeze so profound it could perfectly preserve a meal for thousands of years and even freeze the forests around them. Number 8. The frozen forests of Axel Heiberg Island. Far inside the Arctic Circle lies Axel Heiberg Island, an unforgiving expanse of rock and ice where absolutely no trees can grow today. A team of geologists exploring the barren landscape stumbled upon an impossibility protruding from the snow. They found massive, towering stumps of ancient redwood trees, looking as if they had been chopped down by a lumberjack just a few years ago. These aren't petrified forests turned to stone over millions of years. These are mummified forests. The wood is still pristine enough to burn. Scientists found delicate leaves, seed cones, and soft forest floor debris perfectly preserved in the permafrost. Redwoods require a warm, temperate, and humid climate to thrive, meaning the Arctic was once a lush, vibrant jungle. If the climate changed slowly as glaciers crept southward, these giant trees would have withered, rotted, and broken down into soil over thousands of years of harsh winters. Instead, the evidence shows they were violently snap-frozen. The cellular rupture that usually destroys delicate plant matter during a slow freeze is absent. They weren't slowly buried by advancing ice. They were caught off guard by an apocalyptic permanent winter that arrived overnight. The standard explanation is continental drift slowly carried this forest into the frigid north, but continental drift happens at the speed your fingernails grow, a pace that guarantees total decomposition long before arriving in the Arctic Circle. To snap freeze a redwood forest, the ground beneath them had to move with catastrophic speed. Number 7. The pole shift mechanics. In the mid-1950s, Albert Einstein received a manuscript from a history professor named Charles Hapgood. Rather than dismissing it, the father of modern physics was utterly captivated. He endorsed an idea so terrifying and heretical that mainstream geology has spent the last 70 years trying to quietly bury it beneath the academic floorboards. The concept rewrites the timeline of human existence.
The theory is Earth crust displacement. Mainstream geology says continents drift an inch a year on tectonic plates, but Hapgood argued that the entire outer crust of the Earth can occasionally slip all at once, like the loose skin of an orange sliding over the fruit inside. In this model, the immense weight of imbalanced polar ice caps causes the crust to shift violently, dragging a continent from the warm equator to the freezing poles in the matter of days or weeks. This mechanical slippage beautifully explains the thermodynamic impossibilities we've seen. If the Arctic moved into the polar zone overnight, the redwood forests would snap freeze. If Siberia was suddenly dragged into a deep freeze latitude, a grazing mammoth would have summer buttercups locked in its jaws forever. Historians and geologists say this is just pseudoscience, insisting the Earth only moves in microscopic increments. But alternative theorists argue this crustal slip is the only logical explanation for perfectly preserved megafauna. Which tribe are you on, the slow-moving mainstream or the catastrophic alternative? Tell me in the comments, because finding fresh blood in the ice might sway your vote.
Number 6. The Yuka mammoth. In the summer of 2010, local hunters on the Arctic coast of Siberia noticed a strange patch of fur sticking out of a frozen cliff face. When scientists arrived and began excavating the 39,000-year-old mammoth, now known as Yuka, they noticed a pocket of ice beneath its belly. One researcher took an ice pick and punctured the cavity. Instantly, a stream of dark red, liquid blood poured out onto the snow. For liquid blood to survive 39,000 years, we must venture into the extreme boundaries of cryobiology. Mammoths did have natural antifreeze properties in their blood to survive cold weather, but that adaptation is useless once the animal dies and the heart stops pumping. When biological tissue freezes slowly, water molecules expand and form jagged ice crystals, which act like microscopic daggers, violently shredding the cell walls and destroying the blood. To find free-flowing liquid blood millennia later, the freezing event had to be so devastatingly rapid that ice crystals literally did not have the time to form. The mammoth had to be subjected to a temperature drop so instantaneous it bypassed the laws of cellular rupture, holding the blood in a state of suspended animation. Skeptics argued the blood just had a high concentration of salt, keeping it from crystallizing entirely. But even salt water freezes and degrades over tens of thousands of years. The presence of pristine blood implies a thermodynamic miracle, a freeze so fierce it trapped creatures entirely unsuited for the cold. Number 5. The frozen rhinos of Yakutia. Picture a rhino. You envision a heavily armored beast baking under the hot African sun on a dry, dusty savanna. Now, imagine a team of Russian paleontologists hacking away at the rock-hard Siberian permafrost in Yakutia, only to uncover a massive, woolly rhino frozen solid. It's an animal dramatically out of place, frozen in time like a tragic, hairy mistake. While the woolly rhino had a thick coat, its very anatomy proves it was the victim of a sudden apocalypse. These rhinos were biologically adapted to dry, grassy steppes. Their broad, flat hooves were designed for galloping across firm, dry earth, not for trudging through deep snow or sliding across glacial ice. Furthermore, their frozen stomachs were packed with dry grasses that only grow in arid, snow-free environments. They were actively grazing on a warm, dry plain when a sudden apocalyptic freeze hit them out of absolutely nowhere. The climate didn't shift over centuries, giving them time to migrate south. The environment weaponized against them in a matter of hours, trapping animals entirely unequipped for snow beneath a mountain of ice. The conventional narrative claims these animals simply failed to adapt to encroaching ice age conditions. Yet adaptation takes generations. Suffocating under a sudden blanket of impossible cold takes minutes. What unimaginable force could strip the heat from the Earth's surface so violently? The answer might require looking up at the deadly vacuum of space.
Number 4. The space plunge theory. In 1950, a brilliant and highly controversial scholar named Immanuel Velikovsky published a book proposing a nightmare scenario. He suggested Earth's history wasn't shaped by slow, quiet changes, but by violent, celestial near misses. Imagine looking up at the sky, not to see clouds, but the massive, looming curvature of a rogue planetary body passing so close it literally rips the atmosphere away. Velikovsky's space plunge theory argues that a near miss by a massive comet or a shifting planet like Venus exerted a devastating gravitational pull on the Earth. For a brief, terrifying moment, this gravitational anomaly stripped away Earth's protective atmospheric blanket. By tearing open the sky, the absolute zero vacuum of outer space, which sits at a bone-crushing -450 degrees Fahrenheit, was pulled directly down to the Earth's surface. In the realm of thermodynamics, this is the exact chaotic mechanism required to flash freeze a 6-ton mammoth solid in under an hour. It perfectly explains how animals eating summer flowers could be snap-frozen instantly without any ice crystals having the time to form and rupture their internal organs. Mainstream astronomers call this theory unhinged pseudoscience, protecting their neat, orderly textbooks. Catastrophists, however, argue it is the only thermodynamic model that actually matches the biological evidence. Are we ignoring the unbreakable laws of physics just to protect the fragile ego of modern science? Drop your side in the comments, because the pristine condition of what was frozen next defies logic entirely. Number 3. The frozen baby foal. Deep inside Siberia's massive Batagaika crater, known to locals as the doorway to the underworld, scientists made a heartbreaking discovery. Buried in the permafrost was a tiny 42,000-year-old Lena horse foal, later named Dogor. Lying on its side with its eyes closed, it doesn't look like a millennia-old fossil. It looks exactly like a newborn baby sleeping peacefully on the ground. The preservation of Dogor is so flawless, it challenges everything we know about organic decay. Its delicate auburn hair, tiny hooves, tail, and soft internal organs are absolutely pristine. In any standard freezing scenario, the slow drop in temperature causes severe frostbite. The extremities blacken and decay first as blood retreats to the core, followed by massive cellular rupture as the tissues slowly turn to ice. This baby foal bypassed all of that entirely. There is no evidence of frostbite or struggle. For a creature this small and fragile to retain its perfect physical appearance, it had to be frozen faster than its nervous system could even register the sensation of cold. It was swallowed by a temperature drop so instantaneous it froze time itself. Biologists logically assume the foal fell into an icy bog and drowned quickly, but drowning in a freezing bog still leaves the chemical markers of a panicked, slow death. This foal was frozen cleanly, hinting at a global event that didn't just drop temperatures, but violently scooped up entire ecosystems and threw them into the sky.
Number 2. The flash-frozen plankton of the Andes. If you hike up the Andes Mountains to an exhausting, breathless altitude of 12,000 feet, you will find Lake Titicaca. The air here is incredibly thin, and the surrounding peaks are capped with ice. But if you look closely at the rock faces and the frozen shoreline, you'll see something that should make any geologist's brain short-circuit: the unmistakable frozen remains of deep ocean seahorses. The shoreline of Lake Titicaca is tilted at an impossible angle, and the high-altitude ice and surrounding rock contain trapped oceanic plankton, seashells, and ocean-dwelling seahorses. Let's be perfectly clear, ocean water does not flow uphill 2 miles into the sky. The lake itself is a saltwater ocean anomaly trapped in the clouds. To get sea life flash frozen at 12,000 feet, either the ocean was violently hurled miles into the atmosphere by an unimaginable force, or the massive mountain range itself was thrust up from sea level in the blink of an eye. The sheer kinetic energy required to lift a chunk of the ocean floor miles into the air, while simultaneously freezing it so quickly that fragile seahorses remain intact, is a level of geologic violence that breaks the standard models of Earth's history.
Geologists insist tectonic uplift pushed the mountains up slowly over millions of years, carrying the lake with it. But a millions of years-long elevator ride doesn't explain the sudden tilt, nor the flash-frozen, intact biology that never adapted to freshwater. It is an impossible paradox, leaving us staring down the barrel of the ultimate global extinction event. Number 1. The global Younger Dryas boundary layer. There is a hidden scar on our planet. If you dig down exactly 12,800 years into the Earth's sedimentary record, whether you are in North America, Europe, or parts of Asia, you will find it. It is a thin, unmistakable dark line hiding in the dirt. Below this line lies a vibrant world teeming with millions of massive prehistoric animals. Above this line, there is absolutely nothing. This is the Younger Dryas boundary layer, a black mat of ash, soot, and microscopic nanodiamonds that serves as the ultimate proof of a planetary reset. The evidence screams of a cosmic impact. Roughly 12,800 years ago, it is believed a fragmented comet slammed into the northern hemisphere's ice sheets. The sheer thermal detonation melted the glaciers instantly, unleashing continent-spanning megafloods that swept up the mammoths, rhinos, and redwoods, churning them into the Alaskan muck. But the heat was only the beginning. The impact kicked millions of tons of ash and water vapor into the stratosphere, blocking out the sun completely. What followed was a catastrophic, instant refreezing of the planet. The vaporized ocean fell back to Earth as an apocalyptic blizzard, plunging temperatures to absolute extremes and flash-freezing millions of drowning animals mid-breath. Skeptics long dismissed the impact hypothesis as a myth, attributing the black mat to routine climate shifts. But the presence of impact glass and nanodiamonds leaves no room for debate. The Earth was struck. The planet isn't a slow-moving clock, it is a ticking bomb, and the frozen giants beneath our feet are desperately trying to warn us. We walk around thinking we're the masters of our environment, completely oblivious to the fact that the Earth has a reset button, and the universe isn't afraid to push it. Imagine an island not made of rock, but of death. In the early 1800s, explorers mapping the desolate Arctic Ocean north of Siberia reported a discovery that sounded like a frost-bitten fever dream. They found an entire archipelago, the New Siberian Islands, that appeared to be constructed almost entirely out of frozen, shattered bones. It wasn't just a graveyard, it was a landmass built from the remains of vanished giants. The permafrost of these islands is a literal matrix of ice, sand, and an unimaginable quantity of mammoth tusks, rhino horns, and splintered skeletons. Geologists estimate that in some areas, the very soil is up to 80% biological material by weight. The thermodynamics and logistics of this mass grave are entirely baffling. These islands sit hundreds of miles north of the Arctic Circle, a frozen wasteland completely devoid of the vast vegetation required to feed millions of multi-ton herbivores. Yet, their remains are piled so densely they form actual hills. For millions of massive animals to be pulverized, washed out into the freezing ocean and flash-frozen into a solid land masses before they could rot or sink, we are looking at the unmistakable signature of a continent drowning tidal wave. A wall of water swept them up, carried them north, and snap-froze them into an island of gore in a matter of hours. Orthodox science tries to explain this away as the result of gentle seasonal river flooding, slowly washing carcasses downstream over thousands of years. But slow-moving rivers don't build islands out of undecayed, snap-frozen flesh and shattered ivory. The New Siberian Islands stand as a chilling monument to a day the oceans rose up and the sky froze over, leaving us to wonder when the clock will strike zero again. We walk through our modern climate-controlled lives believing we are the untouchable masters of this planet, but the ice beneath our feet tells a very different, very violent story. It tells us that the Earth has a cataclysmic reset button, and the universe isn't afraid to push it. If you're tired of the sanitized textbook version of history and want to join a community that actually questions the narrative, hit that subscribe button. You are now part of the 1% of curious minds who see the world for the beautiful, terrifying mystery it really is. Drop a comment below with which of these flash-frozen discoveries broke your brain the most, and let the debate begin. Until next time, stay sharp, stay skeptical, and never trust a textbook that tells you the sky can't fall.